Released in 1992, Candyman sent chills down the spines of moviegoers. It quickly became a horror classic. The film's chilling visuals, haunting score, and thought-provoking themes resonated with audiences. Candyman's impact went beyond the box office. It explored social issues and tapped into our deepest fears. Even decades later, Candyman continues to terrify and fascinate. The film has earned its place as a horror masterpiece. Candyman's story is rooted in urban legend. The film draws inspiration from the tales we whisper in the dark. These stories reflect our anxieties and fears. The filmmakers skillfully wove these urban legends into a cohesive narrative. They created a world where the lines between reality and nightmare blurred. The result was a film that felt both familiar and utterly terrifying. Candyman reminded us that some stories are best left untold. But it's too late. The legend has been unleashed. Candyman, released in 1992, is more than just a horror film. It's a chilling exploration of urban decay, social inequality, and the power of belief. Set against the backdrop of Chicago's notorious Cabrini Green housing projects, the film weaves a tale of terror and tragedy. The dilapidated buildings, graffiti-scarred walls, and dimly lit corridors create an atmosphere of unease and dread. Candyman preys on the fears and vulnerabilities of the residents. He is a symbol of the violence, poverty, and despair that permeate their lives. The audience is left questioning what is real and what is a figment of the characters' imaginations. At the heart of Candyman's terror lies the titular antagonist, a vengeful spirit with a hook for a hand. His name, whispered 5 times in a mirror, is said to summon his wrath. But behind the monster lies a tragic tale of love, betrayal, and revenge. Robit Tha, a talented African-American artist in the late 19th century, dared to love a white woman. His forbidden romance enraged the woman's father and the townspeople. They sought a gruesome revenge. Accused of impregnating the woman, Robit Tha was brutally attacked. A mob chased him through the streets, their anger fueled by prejudice and hate. They cornered him in a field where they severed his hand and replaced it with a hook. To add to his torment, they smeared him with honey, attracting a swarm of bees that stung him relentlessly. Bernard Rose, the screenwriter and director of Candyman, drew inspiration from a real-life tragedy that occurred in Chicago just a few years before the film's release. The story of Ruthie Mae McCoy, a resident of the Cabrini Green housing projects, sent shockwaves through the city. McCoy, a 52-year-old African-American woman, lived in a climate of fear and despair. The housing projects were plagued by crime, poverty, and neglect. Residents felt trapped, their voices unheard and their lives disregarded. McCoy had reported hearing strange noises coming from her bathroom, specifically from behind the medicine cabinet. She believed someone was trying to break into her apartment. Fearful for her safety, she reached out for help. Her pleas for assistance were met with indifference. On April 22, 1987, McCoy made a frantic call to 911. She could hear people trying to get into her apartment through the bathroom. She pleaded for help, her voice filled with terror. The police responded to her call but found no signs of forced entry. They knocked on her door, but she didn't answer. Assuming it was a false alarm, they left. McCoy's neighbors, however, continued to hear strange noises coming from her apartment. They reported their concerns to the building manager, but their worries were dismissed. It wasn't until the following day that someone finally forced their way into McCoy's apartment. The police investigation revealed a chilling detail that sent shivers down the spines of everyone involved. McCoy's killer hadn't broken down the door or smashed any windows. They had entered her apartment through a gaping hole in her bathroom wall, concealed behind her medicine cabinet. This crawl space, intended for plumbers, connected the bathrooms of adjacent apartments. It had become a terrifyingly common entry point for intruders in the dilapidated housing projects. McCoy's worst fears had been realized. The noises she had heard, the sense of dread that had consumed her, were not figments of her imagination. Someone had been lurking just inches away, their presence masked by the thin wall. The realization sent a wave of fear through the Cabrini Green community. Section 2. A shocking discovery. As the police pieced together the events leading to McCoy's murder, a horrifying truth emerged. Remember when the police had responded to her initial call but found no signs of forced entry? They had even called her phone, hearing it ring inside the apartment. The killer, or killers, had been hiding inside the apartment the entire time, just feet away from the unsuspecting officers. They had listened as the police knocked, as they called McCoy's name, as they eventually gave up and left. The sheer audacity of the act sent chills down the spines of investigators. The killer had been so brazen, so confident in their ability to evade capture, that they had remained hidden within arm's reach of the very people tasked with protecting McCoy. Section 3. Justice denied. The police investigation into McCoy's murder quickly zeroed in on two suspects, Ted Turner and John Honduras, two young men with criminal records who had been seen carrying McCoy's belongings near the building. They were arrested and charged with her murder. The trial, however, took a shocking turn. Despite seemingly damning evidence, the charges against Turner and Honduras were dropped due to lack of sufficient evidence. The witnesses recanted their testimonies, fearing for their safety in the gang-ridden neighborhood. Justice, it seemed, would not be served. Ruthie Mae McCoy's life, tragically cut short, would become another statistic in a city grappling with violence and despair. Her murder remained unsolved, a haunting reminder of the dangers that lurked within the walls of Cabrini Green. The failure to bring McCoy's killer to justice only deepened the sense of fear and frustration among residents. Section 4. From real-life horror to cinematic terror. The tragic story of Ruthie May McCoy, forever etched in the annals of Chicago crime, would serve as a chilling inspiration for Bernard Rose's Candyman. The film's screenwriter and director saw in her story a reflection of the very real horrors that plagued marginalized communities. The parallels between McCoy's story and the film are undeniable. Both feature a protagonist terrorized by an unseen presence lurking behind the walls of her apartment. Both highlight the dangers faced by women living in impoverished, crime-ridden neighborhoods. But Candyman goes beyond simply recounting a true crime story. It uses the tragic death of Ruthie May McCoy as a springboard to explore themes of urban legend, social inequality, and the cyclical nature of violence. Whispers in the Mirror. The influence of Bloody Mary, Candyman, like many horror films, draws upon a rich tapestry of urban legends. These whispered tales, passed down through generations, tap into our primal fears and anxieties. One such legend, deeply intertwined with the film's mythology, is the story of Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary, a malevolent spirit said to haunt mirrors, has terrified countless children and adults alike. The ritual is simple yet chilling. Chant her name a certain number of times in a darkened room and she will appear, her reflection twisted and vengeful. The legend of Bloody Mary, with its themes of mirrors, reflections, and the summoning of spirits, finds a dark resonance in Candyman. Both figures exist on the periphery of reality, lurking in the shadows, waiting to be called forth. Candyman, like Bloody Mary, is a creature of belief. He gains power from the fear and fascination he inspires. The Hookman cometh, a familiar terror. Another urban legend that casts a long shadow over Candyman is the tale of the Hookman. This terrifying figure, armed with a gleaming hook for a hand, has haunted lovers' lanes and back roads for decades. The Hookman embodies our fears of the unknown, of the dangers that lurk in the darkness. He is a predator stalking his victims in secluded places, his presence heralded by the scrape of metal on metal, Candyman, with his own iconic hook, evokes the same sense of primal terror. He is a figure of violence and brutality, his disfigurement a constant reminder of the cruelty he inflicts. The Hookman legend, like many urban legends, serves as a cautionary tale. Beyond slash and gore, Candyman's enduring appeal. Candyman's appeal extends far beyond the realm of typical slasher films. While it delivers its share of chills and gore, the film's enduring power lies in its exploration of deeper themes. Candyman is as much a social commentary as it is a horror film. It tackles issues of race, class, and the cyclical nature of violence. The film's setting, the dilapidated Cabrini Green housing projects, becomes a character in itself, representing the systemic neglect and despair that plagued marginalized communities. Candyman, the vengeful spirit, embodies the anger and frustration born of generations of oppression. He's a product of a society that created him, a monster born of prejudice and fear. The film's exploration of these complex themes elevates it above mere genre fare. A City of Shadows. The real horror of Cabrini Green. Candyman's setting, the Cabrini Green housing projects, is more than just a backdrop for the film's horrors. It's a character in its own right, one steeped in a tragic and often overlooked history. Cabrini Green, once a symbol of hope for low-income families in Chicago, had descended into a nightmare of crime, poverty and neglect. The buildings, once gleaming with promise, had become dilapidated and dangerous. The residents of Cabrini Green, largely African-American, faced systemic racism and discrimination. They were trapped in a cycle of poverty, their voices silenced, their pleas for help ignored. The real horror of Cabrini Green lay not in the supernatural, but in the very real dangers faced by its residents every day. The fear of violence, the lack of opportunity, the despair that permeated every aspect of their lives, these were the true monsters that haunted their existence. The power of belief. One of Candyman's most intriguing aspects is its exploration of the power of belief. The film suggests that our fears and beliefs can manifest into tangible realities. Candyman, a spirit fueled by fear and myth, gains strength from those who acknowledge his existence. The more people whisper his name, the more powerful he becomes. This concept taps into a primal fear, the idea that our thoughts and beliefs can shape the world around us. Helen Lyle, the film's protagonist, initially dismisses Candyman as a mere urban legend. However, as she delves deeper into his story, she unwittingly gives him the power to cross the threshold between myth and reality. Her skepticism gradually transforms into a morbid fascination, fueling Candyman's resurgence. It plays on our innate fear of the unknown and the unsettling possibility that some legends, whispered in hushed tones, may hold a terrifying truth. Candyman as social commentary. Beyond its supernatural elements, Candyman offers a scathing critique of social injustices. The film's setting, the decaying Cabrini Green housing projects, becomes a microcosm of a society grappling with poverty, racism, and systemic neglect. Candyman's origin story, as a black artist brutally murdered for loving a white woman, speaks volumes about the deeply rooted racism that permeates American history. His vengeful spirit becomes a manifestation of the anger and resentment born from generations of oppression. The film doesn't shy away from depicting the harsh realities faced by marginalized communities. Candyman's presence serves as a constant reminder of these injustices, a symbol of the unresolved trauma that continues to haunt marginalized communities. Section 3. The Cycle of Violence. Candyman explores the cyclical nature of violence, how trauma can be passed down through generations, perpetuating a cycle of fear and suffering. Candyman's own origin as a victim of a hate crime fuels his vengeful rage, leading him to inflict pain upon others. The residents of Cabrini Green, living in a climate of fear and desperation, often resort to violence as a means of survival. The film suggests that this cycle of violence is not a product of individual failings, but a symptom of a broken system that perpetuates inequality and despair. Helen Lyle, initially an outsider to this cycle, becomes tragically entangled in its web. Her pursuit of the Candyman legend inadvertently leads to more violence and suffering, ultimately claiming her own life. Her demise serves as a cautionary tale, highlighting the dangers of ignoring the root causes of social ills. Candyman argues that true justice requires breaking free from this cycle of violence, addressing the systemic issues that perpetuate inequality and create fertile ground for suffering. Section 4. The Haunting of History. Candyman reminds us that the past is never truly gone. It lingers in the shadows, shaping our present and influencing our future. The film's setting, Cabrini Green, is haunted by a history of violence and neglect, its dilapidated walls whispering tales of forgotten tragedies. Candyman himself is a product of this haunting history, a vengeful spirit born from a past act of racial violence. His presence serves as a constant reminder of the sins of the past, the unresolved injustices that continue to cast a long shadow over the present. The film suggests that we cannot escape the consequences of our history, no matter how much we try to ignore or suppress it. True healing and progress require acknowledging the past, confronting its uncomfortable truths, and working towards a more just and equitable future. Candyman challenges viewers to confront the ghosts of history that continue to haunt our society, urging us to learn from the past and strive for a better future, free from the cycle of violence and oppression. Section 1. The Real Candyman. The name Candyman conjures images of the film's villain, but it has a chilling real-life connection. Dean Caul, a serial killer in 1970s Texas, earned the nickname the Candyman. Caul preyed on young boys, luring them with candy from his family's factory. This real-life parallel adds unease to the film's urban legend. It reminds us that monsters often hide in plain sight. The filming of Candyman blurred the lines between fiction and reality. Days before its release, Dontrell Davis was caught in gang crossfire near Cabrini Green. This tragedy highlighted the real dangers faced by residents. It underscored the film's message about violence and social change. Even the crew faced dangers. A stray bullet hit a production van. Thankfully, no one was injured, but it was a chilling reminder of the risks. The act of summoning Candyman by chanting his name in a mirror is one of the film's most iconic and enduring elements. However, the number of times his name must be uttered for him to appear changed during the scripting process. Initially, the screenplay called for a more daunting challenge, 13 repetitions. Director Bernard Rose, however, decided to reduce the number to a more manageable 5. While the reasoning behind this change remains unclear, one can speculate that 13 repetitions might have felt excessive, potentially diluting the suspense and undermining the film's pacing. The decision to opt for 5 repetitions proved to be a wise one. It created a sense of chilling simplicity, making the act of summoning Candyman both more accessible and more terrifying. The number 5, often associated with the 5 senses, adds a subtle layer of symbolism. By chanting Candyman's name 5 times, one is essentially inviting him to enter their world through all 5 senses to fully immerse themselves in his terrifying reality. No discussion of Candyman would be complete without mentioning the bees that swarm around him, a chilling and unforgettable visual element that has become synonymous with the character. To achieve this effect, the filmmakers used thousands of live bees. Newborn bees, only 12 hours old, were used for safety. Tony Todd, who portrayed Candyman, endured numerous stings. He negotiated a bonus of $1,000 per sting. By the end, he earned an additional $26,000. Candyman's impact on the horror genre is undeniable. The film not only terrified audiences, but also sparked conversations about social issues that continue to resonate today. Its exploration of urban legends, racial inequalities, and the cyclical nature of violence left a lasting impression. Candyman transcended the boundaries of horror, becoming a cultural touchstone. The film's iconic villain, with his chilling backstory and haunting presence, has become a symbol of urban fear and social unrest. The film's legacy extends beyond its scares. It serves as a reminder that the monsters we create are often reflections of our own societal failings. Candyman's rage, born from a history of oppression and injustice, forces us to confront the uncomfortable truths we often choose to ignore. Candyman's influence can be seen in countless horror films that followed, inspiring a new generation of filmmakers to explore social issues through the lens of genre filmmaking. The film's impact on popular culture is undeniable, its imagery and themes continuing to resonate in art, music, and literature. Over 3 decades after its release, Candyman remains powerful and unsettling. Its themes of urban decay and racial tensions are still relevant today. The film taps into our deepest fears and anxieties. Candyman represents the darkness beneath our civilized society. The past lingers, shaping our present and future. Urban legends highlight the power of belief and fear. Candyman's legacy shows horror's power to entertain and provoke. Its haunting imagery lingers like a half-remembered nightmare.